Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And today we are going to talk about my three lowest rated players in the first round. Kind of a shocking list, so you definitely want to check it out. And I'm going to explain to you why I don't like these guys. So here we go. Let's do.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And today we're going to talk about my three lowest rated players in the first round. Guys, you pretty much need to steer clear of this season, in my opinion. But before we begin, I'd like to remind you all, if you haven't done so already, to please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and of course, subscribe. So I do appreciate any feedback you can give me. Any conversations you want to talk about these players or any others, please leave them in the comments. So let's get started. So my app right now, I'm super psyched because my app is ready to go. My Perfect Fantasy Draft. You can access it exclusively through my website at fantasyfootballmaverick.com. It's a web-based app, so you can access it from any web-connected device. And it's really going to help you get the edge when it comes to your drafts this season. And I'm going to start doing mock drafts very soon here. I believe my next podcast, I'm going to move my podcasts up to 3 a week, and I'm going to start doing one of those as a mock draft. We're going to try some different strategies, try some crazy stuff, see how it turns out, see if we like those teams better or not. But the way the app works is it scores all the players based on what I call the 4 key stats. And it is value, outlook, reliability, and consistency. And so the first letters of each of those things spell VORC. And based on how they do on each of those 4 categories, they get VORC points. Those points are added up. And then when you are in draft mode, the draft mode, what it does is it breaks your top 250 list down to each round based on how many people are in your league and your draft position. And so in each round, when you click on, let's say, round 5, you're looking at all the players between your 5th round pick and your 6th round pick with a little bit of overlap. But instead of being sorted by their expected draft position or whatever, it's actually sorted by their VORC score. So these different things can either add or subtract points. You know, if a player is undervalued relative to their draft position, they'll have positive value points. But if they're overvalued, they get negative value points. And so you can see that adjustments to any of these criteria will move that player up and down the list in whatever round you're supposed to take them in. And basically what it comes down to is all you need to do is just look at who are the players at the top of the list. Those are the players you want to focus on. Focus on the players at the top, ignore the players at the bottom, and go on from there. And the reason why that's so important is because there's such a massive difference in the quality of players between like the most valuable player and the least valuable player in a single round. You know, a lot of people think that when you're in the 5th round, oh, you're looking at all 5th round value players. That's not the case. There can be players as good as 3rd round players in the 5th round, or they can be as worse as like 8th or 9th round players. It's this huge range of what the player, you know, how the players rate. And by using the VORC score, we're creating an overall score for the player specific to that round of the draft that you should be considering taking that player. So it really helps, and I'm very excited about it. Like I said, we're going to do some mock drafts. We're going to show you how it works. But what I want to talk about here is these 3 players scored the lowest VORC points in the first round. So these are 3 players that, again, I'm not interested in any of them. One of them, if I'm a gambling man, I might take it. But there's a reason. There is a reason why they don't score well. And the nice thing about the app is it tends to make these things transparent. It tends to make it obvious about who are the good choices and who are the bad choices. So let's just start out. And we're going to start with the 3rd worst player. This is the player that ranks out of the top 12. He ranks 10th. So as far as the VORC score goes. And that would be Zeke Elliott of the Dallas Cowboys. The reason is because he only scores 31 VORC points, which is not that great. And it's kind of surprising that he doesn't score that well, because he actually scores well on several categories, but he also scores very poorly on others as part of that VORC score. So that's what we're going to go through. Now, when it comes to the VORC score, what I like to say as a general rule is I like my players to score at least 40 VORC points in any given round. And the VORC score is relative to each round. So if you have a player that scores 40 VORC points in the first round, that it cannot be compared to a player scoring 40 VORC points in the fifth round. And the reason is because the value component is the first round player, you're looking at it against your first round pick. And the fifth round player, you're basing it against your fifth round pick. So it's relative to that. And in the app, you could actually restore someone like Zeke Elliott to the fifth round to see how he would score in the fifth round. You'll see that he will score very well because he will have excellent value in the fifth round, but that's not going to happen. There's no way that Elliott's going to go any later than maybe early second round, maybe. But he's pretty much a lock and loaded RB1. Okay, so let's go over the different stats. So the first thing to know about him is things that he scores very well on is his consistency and his reliability ratings. I mean, we all know he doesn't miss games. And his volume in those games is very consistent. So he high reliability, 10 out of 10 on consistency. That's the best you can do. The high 10 players are players that I like to seek out. But in Zeke's case, it's not enough. And so what's holding him back? Well, the biggest part of what's holding him back is the value. Now, right now, I have him projected with 245 carries for 931 yards and 8 touchdowns, along with 47 receptions for 343 yards and 2 additional touchdowns on 68 targets. So volume is excellent, over 300 touches and targets, but the efficiency isn't that great, especially in the yards per carry. But right now, his value rank based on this projection and half-point PPR scoring, which is what I'm going to do for all these players here. He is only the 25th most valuable player in the league, and he rates as my RB15, which is much lower than most other projections have. But I got to say, man, I'm not convinced. We've seen a decline in his yards per carry over each of the past 3 seasons. And he also has a head coach that doesn't like to feature the running back. I mean, this is a team, the Dallas Cowboys, is going to win their games through the air with their amazing receiving core. And that's where they're going to make their bread and butter. And I think Zeke is going to take a back seat. Mike McCarthy has never featured the running back. And so that's something to consider, and that's why I have him rated so low. And really, after last year's dismal performance, I mean, he was awful last year. He was so bad that when it came time for the fantasy playoffs, most of the fantasy experts out there were saying you should sit Zeke. And it made sense. He didn't do anything last year, and that was the thing that was most disappointing to me. You know, obviously, there was issues with Dak going down with an injury, and there was problems on the offensive line with injuries as well, and that's why he did so poorly, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. But when we needed Zeke to step up and to take a bigger role on that offense, he didn't do it. He didn't do it the whole season. And so just based on that, man, that really kind of takes the wind out of the sails for me for wanting to take a chance on him. 6th overall, I just think it's too. I think it's a lot of name recognition that's keeping him up that high. Plus, he's been in the league now for 5 seasons. He's a well-known asset and commodity. But I just think he's overvalued. I would much prefer to see him in the second round. That's where I would take a chance on Zeke, is in the second round as my second running back. Yes. As my first running back, I'm not going to do it, man. And I hope you don't either. So that's where he's at. 31 VORC points, 10th worst option in the first round. There you go. I wouldn't touch him. I think there's better running backs that are available after Zeke, and so that's where I'm at with that one anyway. So my next one is second worst. He only scores 23 VORC points, which is just awful. But it is Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. Now, again, this is not an issue about his consistency. And his consistency is just like Zeke, 10 out of 10. You can count on him getting a huge workload every game he plays. And actually, his outlook is much better. I've got him projected. I got Saquon projected with 286 carries for 1,286 yards, 11 touchdowns, along with 60 catches for 462 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns there on 85 targets. So better volume than Zeke, better production and efficiency than Zeke. And he is my third most valuable player. The only players that are more valuable than him are CMC and Dalvin Cook. That's it. He's my third most valuable. So why does he rate so poorly here? And his outlook is really good, even though he still has the injury designation. That's the other thing. He still has his injury designation on him. As I said in the last episode, I need to see Saquon as a full participant before I'm going to remove that. Designation. And so what kills him? It's his reliability. That's what it comes down to. He has had now 2 consecutive injury-riddled seasons. Last year, obviously, he missed most of the season with a torn ACL. The year before, was dealing with a high ankle sprain for like the whole second half of the season, missed a couple games there as well. It's just, excuse me, it's just a very risky situation. It's not something that I want to be a part of. Now he has a lot of stuff going for him, and the biggest thing that he has going for him is it is a contract year for Saquon Barkley. And there is precedent that injury-prone running backs become like indestructible on their contract year. And I'm going to give you 2 names. Doug Martin and Noshawn Marino are 2 examples of guys that were low reliability players and were awful choices for fantasy, but on their contract year, which this is for Saquon, they became superhuman and had a career season. And so that is the potential upside here. We know that the Giants' offense is going to be better, but there's so many risks. There's so much unknown. You got the whole Daniel Jones thing too. It's a contract year for him too, essentially. It depends on how much of a gambling person you are. I personally am not. And even once we remove the injury designation, he's still only going to have about 33 VORC points. That's below my 40-point threshold. He's just a very, very risky option, and I just don't want to take a chance because of that. But of these 3, he would be the one I would consider. He would be the one to maybe, if I'm in there, maybe I'm picking 7th or 8th, and Barkley's still on the board. Okay, maybe I'll roll the dice, but frankly, there's better options. There's more reliable options that you should focus on. I'm just very concerned with a number of things about Barkley. But anyway, it's not all bad for him. It's just some bad. So who's the worst? Who's the worst rated player in the first round? And I don't think it's going to be a surprise when I tell you who it is, but it is Davante Adams of Green Bay. And there's a number of reasons why. And the first is he's coming off that amazing season where he got 18 touchdowns. So he already had the regression tag attached to him. And we know he's going to fall back from that. And right now I have him projected with 95 catches for 1,110 yards and 9 touchdowns, assuming that Jordan Love is the quarterback. And that's where I'm running right now with Green Bay. I'm going under the assumption that Aaron Rodgers will not be back, will not play for Green Bay this season. So it's all a matter is he going to get traded to another team, or is he just going to sit out a year and then he'll go to some team next year? But because of that, his value isn't great. He is my 19th most valuable player overall. He is my wide receiver 7. Obviously, Davante Adams is the first wide receiver being taken off the board. And frankly, when you look at the top 7 wide receivers, he is my least favorite option. There's just so much negative pressure on his performance that outside of a miracle that Aaron Rodgers gets reinstated onto the team, comes back, they mend their fences, everybody's happy, kumbaya, which I would put the percentage chance of that happening at about 5% or less. it's not going to be a good year for Davante Adams. And how could you select him over someone like Tyreek Hill or Stephon Diggs or, A.J. Brown or Calvin Ridley? I mean, there's so many better options than Davante Adams right now. I just don't see why he's still in the first round. He should fall to the second round, in my opinion. But yeah, he only scores 17 VORC points, 17, and so it's just not a good idea to take him with your first round pick. So anyway, those are my three players. And I, I've been doing so many positive videos about players I really, really like for the upcoming season. Oh, you got to check out these players and put these guys on your list. And I'm just doing a real negative Nelly one here. But again, these three guys all have legitimate risks and limited upside, with the exception of possibly Saquon. But they all are, when you look at the first round players, these are the three riskiest players in the first round. That's what it comes down to. So you should just stay away from them. Take better options. They're more reliable options than Saquon, more upside options than Zeke. There's better options out there. So that's it. So thank you very much for watching the podcast today. I do appreciate it. I know last week I only did one podcast instead of two. It's just, I left town for a few days. I went camping with the kids. And even though I was only gone for like 4 days, I come back. It's like I was gone for a month. I was so busy last week, just trying to get caught up. But like I said, now that we're in the summer, now that my app's all ready to go, I am going to be doing, I'm going to be adding a third podcast. I'm going to be doing mock drafts. So we're going to try different mock drafts, different size leagues, different draft positions, but also different draft strategies to see if any of these draft strategies really net out something really positive that we could go on to say, you know what, this might not be a bad strategy for you this year. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do our first mock draft podcast this week. And so anyway, just more entertainment there. So thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And again, if you have any questions or comments about any of these players, these three players, or any others in the first round, let's talk about it. Who do you think is the player that should be avoided in the first round? All right. So thanks so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Have yourself a great fantasy day, and we will talk again soon.